Hey guys, welcome back to a brand new episode of Muppet Fans Talking with a brand new setup. Been testing it out for a while, but now I think I finally got the proper way to get the podcast up and going. Still a fun little podcast with me and my friends sitting down talking about Muppets and stuff. And today, I have with me a very, very good friend of mine in the puppet community. Uh, I've known him for many years. He is a fantastic puppeteer, but above all, he is the kindest dude I have ever had the pleasure of meeting. I'm here today with my good friend Spencer Cohen. How are you, Spencer?
Hey, Marcelo, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me, and thanks for that awesome introduction.
Of course, of course. I always try to give a lot of my friends those awesome introductions because you guys are awesome. I mean, for those that I've met in person or online, Instagram, TikTok, whatever the case may be, you guys have such amazing talent. You guys are incredibly talented with this art form of puppetry, and it would be rude of me not to give you those awesome introductions. So, above all, Spencer, thank you so much for joining me today on a brand new episode of Muppet Fans Talking.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here. I'm looking forward to talking about Muppets with you, man.
All right, wonderful. So, first off, Happy New Year of 2022. And right now, with everything going on in the world right now, you have any new projects that you're working on right now, currently, that you could talk about?
Well, I'm currently working as a puppeteer with Puppets by Palmieri, and I've been doing puppet shows through the company on weekends for birthday parties and whatnot. So I've been doing some shows here and there for them. Additionally, I've been making my own puppet content on TikTok. If you're on TikTok, for any of Marcelo's listeners, please feel free to follow my buddy and friend, Burger the Monster. He can be found at Burger the Monster on TikTok.
Yes, I have seen a lot of your TikTok videos with Burger and Donut. Uh, met I knew about those characters way before TikTok came about because we actually did meet going back a ways here. We met at the Puppet Kitchen for Monitor Night. On occasional Monitor Nights, we would go to these events and practice monitor puppetry, which is the style that we do. And you and me, as well as everyone else that was there, Sebastiano Ricci, uh, John. I keep forgetting how to pronounce his last name, but hey, if we get him, there you go, there you go. So hey, John, if you're ever interested, let me know. I'd love to have you on the podcast. Anyway, uh, but yeah, I that's where we first met, and
Yep.
from there, we just had a good connection over the years, whether it be Puppet Kitchen, puppet related stuff, or Muppet events at the Museum of the Moving Image, and it's been wonderful, and I really enjoy seeing a lot of your characters on TikTok. They are absolutely hilarious and phenomenal.
Oh, Marcelo, that's very kind of you to say. Thank you. I love watching the figments on TikTok and Instagram. Really, those characters always brighten my day when I see them.
Thanks so much, man, and also congratulations on working alongside Chris Palmieri with helping him out with his shows while he's currently working on Winnie the Pooh on Broadway. For those that are listening or those that have had the chance to go see the show live in person before they moved to Chicago prior to this recording, they are phenomenal. It is
Oh,
absolutely.
yeah, I couldn't agree more. I actually got to see Winnie the Pooh. When did I see the show? It was like 2 or 3 or 4 weeks. I can't remember. A few weeks ago, I saw it off Broadway, and I was blown away by the show. Everyone involved, the cast and crew, and yes, shout out to my boss and my buddy Chris Palmieri, who does a phenomenal job as Tigger in Winnie the Pooh. He's got the voice down. The puppetry is phenomenal. phenomenal. I felt like I was really watching Tigger on the stage. It was a great show, and I can't recommend it enough. So yeah, definitely if you're in the city, New York City, check it out, and if you're in Chicago, check it out when Pooh arrives. I want to say in March.
I
When
I I think
Chicago.
I think that's when they'll be doing the show. I think they'll be there in March. But I mean, before we get started talking about your history and Muppet related stuff, I just have to go on a good tangent here for a second and say, my God, if there was ever a off Broadway musical with puppets that that really needs that praise, it is definitely Winnie the Pooh. Everybody there just done such a phenomenal job, and to think that I actually auditioned for that show this past summer, uh, knowing that
Wow.
yeah they asked me to a little bit of a backstory if before we get started with with you, Spencer. Uh, well, one, I have to give thanks to Sebastiano Ricci because he was the one that gave me the hookup. We were talking at an event, and I asked him, "How did you get involved?" He said, "Well, they were looking for builders," and I said, "Wow, that's cool. I hope they hold auditions." He says, "Here," gives me the email address, says, "Send them your stuff." Like 2 months go by, they asked me, "Hey, would you mind coming in to audition for Winnie the Pooh?" And I said, "Sure. Who am I going to play?" He said, "Winnie the Pooh." So, okay. I never I never thought that would ever happen, but I did. I did that. And then they asked me, "Could you audition for Owl and Eeyore?" And I said, "Absolutely, I'll do that." Then before I was about to leave, they said, "Oh, would you mind auditioning for Rabbit?" And I said, "Okay, sure, sure. I just hope you don't ask me for Tigger because I don't have his laugh. I don't have his laugh down. I have his voice, but that's a story for another day." But overall, I mean, the amount of messages I got from people saying, "Oh, I hope you get this audition. I hope you get it. I hope you become Winnie the Pooh. You have the most amazing Winnie the Pooh impression I've ever heard." I'm like, look, whoever gets it, and they have my full support. And just seeing these guys, holy cow, Jake, Jake Basil, he does a better Winnie the Pooh than I can, and that's saying something. That's saying something. That's saying something because Pooh is a rather sweet and yet difficult character to replicate. From my point of view. But man, Jake as Winnie the Pooh, Chris Palmieri as Tigger, as well as Spencer Sebastiano taking over Tigger and Chris taking over for Winnie the Pooh.
Yep.
Just everybody there was just, my God. We better continue on with this episode before I start having a little bit of a memorial breakdown.
No, I understand what you're saying. There's definitely a lot of amazing talent in this show, working on the show, I should say, both cast and crew. So yeah, I agree, man.
So now that we finished off that little tangent, let's go back a ways, Spencer. So what was your first experience to puppetry, and what got you interested later down the line, knowing that this is something here that I love and I want to pursue it.
That's a great question. I have to say that when I was a child, I grew up on Sesame Street. It was arguably my favorite show. And fun fact, before I could even speak as a child, I learned how to sing thanks to songs such as I Love Trash. So, and I know this because my parents have recordings at home. I would hum or go like do 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 as a kid. Like I couldn't talk, but I could sort of like scat the tune of the song, so to speak. So I credit with Sesame Street with teaching me how to sing and being my first introduction to music. So then, as I got older, I mean, stopped watching Sesame Street, but some of us come back to Sesame Street and just the Muppets in general. So I was going into high school, and I went to theater camp, and I was friends with this kid named Brian. And Brian was telling us one day at theater camp that his dad, Jim Krupa, worked with Jim Henson and was a puppeteer and puppet builder with the Muppets. I remember thinking to myself, oh my gosh, that is awesome. I would love to do that. So then a few months go by, and this was 2008, I believe. A Muppets Christmas Letter to Santa premiered on NBC. And I got the chance to watch it, and I remember loving it. Like, I know personally, I love A Muppet's Christmas Letters to Santa. I think it's such a fun special. And after I watched it, I remember looking it up on IMDb, and I saw Jim listed in the credits, and that reminded me of the story Brian told me about. So from there, I was in high school, Marcelo. I was in 9th grade. I started making videos with, like, one of my stuffed animal monkeys, and performing him as if he was a puppet. And I didn't put this on YouTube or anything. It was just for fun, so to speak. And then from there, I remember I found this Finding Nemo shark puppet. It was Bruce, the shark from Finding Nemo. He was a Disney Store, puppet. And I remember using him, and I started making videos with him, singing songs. And I would use my webcam on my old computer at home as sort of like a monitor, so to speak. It worked exactly like a monitor in television puppetry. From there, about a year or two from there, I said to myself, you know what? I got to do this. I got to buy a Muppet Whatnot from FAO Schwartz, because at the time, that was when they had the Muppet Whatnot workshop in the city at FAO Schwartz, the flagship store. So I asked my parents if I could go to FAO Schwartz and build my own Muppet Whatnot and for Christmas, and they were kind enough to give me a Whatnot. Well, paid for me to build one at the Whatnot workshop, and from there I made more videos with my Whatnot. And then it was my senior year of high school when the 2011 Muppets movie came out. The Muppets, so to speak. That's the name of the movie.
Yeah, exactly.
And I remember loving I saw it twice in theaters. I know a lot of fans saw it more than twice in theaters, but for me at the time, seeing it twice in theaters was a big deal, because I usually only saw movies once in theaters. And I remember not just the movie, but the anticipation for the movie. The build-up for the movie I was just so pumped, dude. So that was really cool. And then that summer, right after the Muppets was released, I remember I was going into college that fall, but I had a lot of time to kill that summer, so I made a lot of videos with my Muppet Whatnot. Max is his name. I still have him. And essentially, I made all these videos over that summer, and I got hooked even more into puppetry. And from there, I took classes, mainly in the city. I went to puppet festivals. I joined the Puppeteers of America. I started doing gigs eventually. I founded and was president of the SUNY New Paltz Puppeteering Club. I went to college at SUNY New Paltz, and I started a club there, and that's how I met my buddies Kyle Mahoney and John Papovich, two amazing puppeteers. And yeah, that's really how I got started. Yeah.
That is one heck of a story, man. Especially considering the fact that your friend Brian is, and correct me if I'm wrong, your friend Brian is the son of Jim Krupa, designer and builder for the Muppets. And for those that don't know Jim Krupa, for those that do know, pay no attention to the story. But for those that do not know who Jim Krupa is, the most talented amazing builder, designer, performer, overall nice guy. And that that for anybody, for any Muppet fan or anyone that's really getting into puppetry, that's almost like the door just opened for you at such an early age, knowing that your friend is knowing that your friend is the father of someone that worked alongside our hero, Jim Henson.
Right, right. Yeah, and Marcel, I forgot to mention, if I may add, I actually got to work with Jim Krupa back in 2015 when I attended the Eugene O'Neill National Puppetry Conference. So I got to puppeteer and perform in Jim's original show called The Howdy Do Show, in which I was a puppeteer. And being directed by Jim was an amazing experience I will never forget, because Jim really took me under his wing, and he really made me not just a better puppeteer, but a better performer and human being by being a part of his show. So for that opportunity, I will always be grateful.
Now that's saying a lot, man. Especially for anyone that's pursuing anything in the arts, when you get to meet one of your heroes, your idols, and they take you under their wing and they show you, what they learned along the way, and they pass it down to other artists. That's an overall blessing, and that is something that you will definitely carry on with you for the rest of your life. I mean, I've experienced that myself, very limited, but it's still there. It's still there. And I'm also going to mention this, I have yet to attend the Eugene O'Neill conference. I've always wanted to attend, but I just couldn't afford it. But hopefully one day I'll make my way to the Eugene O'Neill conference, because for me, that if I manage to get there and just meet with these people and connect and network and just try to keep in contact with these people, eventually more doors will open up. And it really does sound like you really have this nailed down, and you have such a long way to go.
Marcel, thank you so much for your kind words. I have to say though, I'm always learning.
Yeah.
I would say I've mastered. No way, shape, or form have I mastered puppetry or the art of puppetry. I still have so much more to learn. I think I'll always be learning, because there's always something every day when I'm just making videos at home. I'm always learning something new. There's always just so much to take in, to learn, to just build upon your skills with. Yeah.
Exactly right. It's not only just like mastering, the techniques of A, B, and C, but every single day when you're doing this, there's always much more to learn, or things that you tend to pick up and you didn't even know that's something that was definitely in the palm of your hands. Pun intended. Which is true. And also going back to those experiences in high school when the Muppets came out in 2011. After that movie, I think I was in 10th grade. When that movie came out. And that's when I started building puppets at that time. Yeah, it was.
Nice.
And I mean, much like anyone else, I was teased and picked on and messed with in middle school because I love the Muppets. I still love them to this day, but I was being messed with for so long by students and teachers that I almost had to say goodbye. But then when 2011 came around and the movie came out, I'm like, yeah, I'm not saying goodbye. I'm not saying goodbye ever again. Like I was about this close to saying, all right, time for me to move on, because I can't take the teasing anymore. Then the trailer came out. I'm like, no, you guys aren't going anywhere. Get back here.
I can sort of relate in a way, because while I wasn't teased for like puppetry sooner. And part of the reason I didn't pursue it sooner was I was worried people would tease me or make fun of me. So that's why I started getting into puppetry, like performing puppets, like at such a late age, like after high school, because I was worried about being teased in high school by my peers. So
Yeah.
yeah, I understand where you're coming from, honestly.
No, yeah. And like for anyone listening, if they ever want to consider doing the style of puppetry that me and Spencer do, which is basic hand monitor puppetry or rods, marionettes, shadow, black lights, whatever the case may be, it's whether you're 18 years old and you still don't know what you want to do, or whether you're in your early or late 30s, it's never too late. It's never too late to go out there and pursue what it is that you love. Because if you let it go away for so long, you're gonna sit back and think, man, what if? What if I did this? So it's never too late. Even if you start doing it at a later age, you'll be doing it, and you'll build from that, and you will definitely be a lot more happy.
Amen, brother. Amen.
So now that we've got your history on puppetry, how did you go about creating your characters? Because if I could say this, you have the most funny yet funny group of characters I've ever seen. And the reason I say funny twice is because one, the names are funny, but their overall characterizations, they are funny, if you understand the meaning.
I understand, and I appreciate your kind words. It's very kind of you to say. How do I go about creating characters? Well, that's a tough question. It really depends on the character. I mean, a lot of what I do is I look at the character first because I built some of my own puppets, but for the most part, my aunt builds my characters for me. And my aunt Karen does a fantastic job building all these wonderful puppets I have. Burger, Donut, the monster, Snoogles the rooster. She does a phenomenal job building these puppets. And so when I see the puppet when it's done being built by my aunt, I take a look at the character and I think, what kind of character is this? Are they shy? Are they friendly? And you can tell a lot by what the character looks like. And I kind of create, like, I don't want to say a bio, but maybe like a mini bio in my head of like who they are. And a lot of my characters are based off of people that I know. Like, for example, my character Shortcake was built by my aunt as a gift for me right after my grandma, or as we called her, Grammy, passed away. Grammy was one of my best friends. I loved her so much. We talked so much over the phone when she was in Florida and I was up at school in New York. And we would talk multiple times a week. I'm getting off topic, but you'll see what I mean in a second. So Grammy was like my best friend, and losing her was so devastating. So when my aunt built this puppet and surprised me with this character, this pink character, she said, her name is Shortcake, Shorty for short. And the inside joke with Shortcake is my Grammy was very small. Short, so to speak. So I'm like, for a while, I didn't touch Shortcake at all because I didn't know what to do with the character. And it was I was still grieving from my Grammy's passing. And my mom was like to me, you gotta, Aunt Karen spent so much time on this puppet. You should really perform it. You should really do something with the characters. And I'm like, you're right. So I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, who do I want this character to be? She's short like Grammy. You know what? What if I made Shortcake not my Grammy specifically, but based off my Grammy? Shortcake is very loving like Grammy. She can be moody at times, but deep down she has a huge heart and she loves everyone so much. she's like a mother figure to all the characters. So, Shortcake, long story short, oh, pun intended. Shortcake is essentially based off my Grammys. So some of my characters are based off of people I know. Burger, to a certain extent, I'd say is based off of me. He's very naive. He's very goofy. He likes sandwiches. All right, maybe that's a little bit of a stretch. I like sandwiches, not as much as burgers. So, yeah. Sometimes I base my characters off people. Sometimes relationships help with characters. Like when I built a puppet, my character Popover, who's Burger's nephew, I remember building him at the puppet kitchen. They had a workshop, and I was like to myself, who do I want this character to be? And I thought, wouldn't it be so funny if Burger had a nephew? Sort of like how Donald Duck has 3 nephews, or Kermit has nephew Robin. What if Burger had his nephew? Because Burger's just so clueless. So he would make an awful uncle. It would be so funny. And what if I made Popover slightly smarter than Burger? And so that's how I developed Popover. But yeah. So it really depends on the character. Long story short.
Absolutely.
Does that answer your question?
No. It does. It does. I mean, just listening to how you go about creating the characters, and with that first example of when the puppet is built, what would this character be? You create a bio. You base it off people or elements of yourself that you blow up and that goes into the character. Those are and yes, I'm going to say this. These are basically the Muppet elements that we've taken throughout the many years, and we go about creating our own original characters because of the methods and the techniques that Jim and Frank, Jerry Nelson, Richie Hunt, Dave Goelz, Jerry Jewell, head writer, and Don Saline, that everything that we go about creating characters, we all learn it from other people, but we definitely know that those other people learned it from Jim and Frank and the rest of them. So you basically have there's a good sense of Muppet knowledge when it comes to creating characters. And I'm just thinking about Burger and his nephew, how there's it's sort of a yin and yang kind of thing, because Burger he's not the smartest chip in the bag, but his nephew is. And how, the nephew and how I think the nephew would try to develop a solution, and then Burger would just be like a little disgruntled or dumbfounded by it, which is a lot of fun. And so just hearing that, that's the most important thing when it comes to that, when it comes to creating characters visually, once you have it in your hand, and just try to think, okay, what would this character be, like personality wise, voice wise, a bio about him. Those are all the essential things that you need in order to create a character.
Thank you. I agree, but I mean, I know Dave Goelz does this, where he'll find a character trait and sort of like build his character off of that specific character trait. So yeah, it's definitely a helpful method, a helpful tool, definitely for creating characters. Yeah.
And for me, I definitely go with with Dave Goelz method, but I also go along with Frank Oz's method, where when you create a character, you gotta have a lock, because that lock will get you into character. For many of mine, it's usually like an expression or a laugh that they have, and with either one of those laughs would just help me get into character. In the beginning, it was actually just the same laugh for each of them, but at the time I didn't know how to expand my range within my voice. And so and so I just stuck with that for a while, and then years and years of practice and screaming and hollering, and now I have a nice solid room where I can scream and holler as much as I want, and I can expand my range. It's all about, and it's also about placement too. It's also about placement with that. Not to go off topic with voices people, because that's only 10% of what goes into this stuff, but it is also good to know. Now going on to my favorite part of the podcast, where I ask you, who is your favorite Muppet? And with this one, it could be from, I'll give you three. And the reason I'll give you three is, one would be for Sesame Street, the Muppet Show, and Fraggle Rock. I mean, I know there's a bunch of other ones out there, but those are the main three that generally fit the Muppet description.
Okay, all right. I'd have to say for the Muppets, my favorite character would be Scooter. I used to joke around before I started shaving my head and went bald. I had red hair.
You and me both. You and me both, man.
You and me both. And yeah, I used to have red hair. I had no beard and I had glasses. So in high school, I used to joke around and say I looked like Scooter. I also played the guitar. I still play the guitar. So, I mean, when Scooter in the Muppet Show episode featuring the Star Wars guest stars, in that episode, Scooter covers six-string orchestra, and he sings the tune, and he plays his acoustic guitar, and that song, that performance really resonated with me. I saw myself in that character, and yeah, so Scooter's my favorite of the Muppet Show characters. Sesame Street, I'd have to say, Super Grover. Yeah, Super Grover. I love Super Grover. He thinks he's the greatest hero, but he's a total, he's totally crazy and just like clumsy. That's a good word to describe him. He struggles with flying. He always crashes. I just think he's such a funny character. And Grover in general, too, I think is just such a fun character. Frank Oz did a fantastic job performing him and creating him. And then Eric Jacobson does an incredible job continuing the legacy of the characters. Definitely Grover for Sesame Street. And then for Fraggle Rock, I'd have to say my favorite character would be Uncle Traveling Matt, because I love that when they just take this puppet character and they bring him out into the real world, like our world. It's not a set. He's interacting with people, human people, not puppets, and it's just so ridiculously crazy and funny. I find him a fun character. Yeah.
Absolutely. And speaking of which, Uncle Traveling Matt, as well as the rest of the Fraggles, will be returning on January 21st. Prior to this recording, for those that are listening to this podcast episode now, definitely be sure to check out Fraggle Rock, Back to the Rock on Apple TV. It is amazing. It's awesome. Everybody there is phenomenal. Dave Goles, Karen Brill reprise their roles as Boober and Red Fraggle. John Tartaglia, I do know. He's portraying Gobo in the show. Amazing. I mean, absolutely amazing work. It's just taking on one of my favorite characters portrayed by Jerry Nelson. And John just knocks it out of the park. For the rest of the cast, everybody, fantastic job. And definitely go see it. Definitely check out the new Fraggle Rock show.
Yeah.
And also, if I may add, to your favorite character being Scooter, before the pandemic happened, I attended the Museum of the Moving Image for I Am Big Bird. And after the screening, I had the pleasure of meeting Richard Hunt's sister. She was
wow.
Yes, she was in the audience, and
Wow.
we are friends on social media. But this was the first time that I got to meet her, and I shared with her so many stories of, how Richard's characters, they sang these popular songs, and I found out about
Yeah.
these popular songs, whether it was Scooter singing Six String Orchestra, or Janice singing Rockin' Robin, and she tells me the story that, before the kids knew about any of those songs, they came across those songs because they did them on the Muppet Show, and Richard would call, and it was all thanks to Richard and his. He was just, my God, not only a great puppeteer but an amazing singer too.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. He had a great voice. Yeah.
Yeah, he was. But that's just one story I had to share. Prior to your answer being, Scooter being one of your favorite characters, I just had to share that because it's not every day. It's not every day you get to meet the Muppet performers, both past and current, as well as get connections with with family. That's a big one.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so
Definitely.
we got two more things to go here, and then right before we let you go, and now this one is a little bit more non Muppet related because with this one I like to ask who's your favorite Muppet, but there are also other puppet characters in the world that are not Muppets, but they have that sort of hand style look to them. And with this one, you don't have to give me three, but you could definitely share which one is one of your favorites, whether it be from a random TV show or feature film or whatnot.
Yeah, I'd have to go with Yoda from Star Wars.
That
I mean, Frank Oz he's incredible in any role he performs, but or portrays. But Yoda is just one of my favorite performances of all time by him. The character is just so. I'm trying to think of the words to describe him. Just so powerful, wise. Um, I've heard stories people saw The Empire Strikes Back for the first time when it was released, and they didn't even realize Yoda was a puppet. That's how believable that character was and still is to this day. The performance definitely holds up. And every time you see Yoda, especially as a puppet, it's such a wonderful feeling. Like, because for a while after the original Star Wars trilogy was released, in the prequel trilogy for the Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, Yoda was a CGI character. He wasn't a puppet, and he was still wonderful. He was still awesome, but I felt that some of the magic was lost when Yoda is portrayed as a puppet when you watch all the films together. So when they brought back Yoda as a puppet in Star Wars The Last Jedi, I remember sitting in the theater, and there were rumors that Yoda was coming back, but no one knew if he was going to be puppet or CGI. So when I saw him as a Force Ghost puppet, I was like, oh my gosh, they brought him back as a puppet. That's so cool. And yeah, I think Yoda would be my favorite non-Muppet puppet character.
that's no, that's awesome to hear, and which kind of helps me segue into this news section that I actually wanted to discuss with you, uh, and that is about replacing puppetry with CGI. Now, for me, I'm more of a practical effects kind of person when it comes to feature films, especially when it comes to characters. So like creatures and little aliens walking around or something like that. Now, I'm not against CGI per se. I mean, it is awesome when it's used right,
Right.
but but for me, and you can jump in at any time when I'm discussing this, that I kind of feel like if you're using CGI for like creature characters, there's not that there's not that much sense of believability. There's not that sense of connection than what it is to be working alongside a puppet. Because with a puppet you can definitely see it. You can see it. You can actually like shake his hand or pet it or tap his head and just get that sense of, yeah, I'm not talking to anyone invisible here. This is really in front of me, and I can actually make some sort of connection to that with throughout this movie. Well, what's your take on that?
It's funny you ask because back in college, my freshman year, I wrote an entire paper on this exact topic. Yeah, I'm all for practical effects over CGI. I also think CGI is great, and I think it's a great tool. But I think overall, I prefer a puppet or a practical effect over CGI. And going back to Star Wars, although Star Wars is a bad example because I actually like how they use CGI with a lot of the characters.
Yeah, that is true.
And I like but I also like when they use the practical effects too, like BB-8. He was a puppet in the sequel trilogy, and I thought that was just so magical. That character, the way that it was so lifelike, yet it was a practical effect. That was just so awesome. I mean, but at the same time, I will say there are instances where I would prefer CGI over puppetry. Like, if I'm watching a live action animated Looney Tunes movie like Looney Tunes Back in Action or Space Jam, I want to see Bugs Bunny animated. I don't want to see him as a puppet.
True.
Though I will say, sort of related, I don't know if you know this, for Looney Tunes Back in Action, they had on-set puppets of Bugs and Daffy that were used to interact with like the actors like Brendan Fraser and Jenna Elfman.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. They used on-set puppets and then replaced the puppets with animation afterwards. So that's an example of how puppets can be used, at least in not pre-production, in filming. You know what I'm saying?
No, that is true, and they do use those for the actors to interact with these characters because, granted, in post-production they're just gonna get painted on top and they're gonna be cartoon animated rather than someone that's holding them up as a hand puppet for an hour and a half.
Right.
So on that note, I definitely understand where you're coming from with that, and I agree with that. At the same time, there are some things that I would love to see more practical effects and puppetry used a lot more. And then there are instances where CGI can definitely manage with what's happening here. Yeah, I can't imagine a Transformers city fight with large costume robot style puppets attacking a miniature city.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
And so, all right. So we got two more things here, and then we have to wrap up.
Okay.
Now with all that you're doing, with gigs and creating video content, getting your stuff out there, getting yourself out there, and also helping out with Chris Palmieri's puppet shows. There's a lot of people out there that they know what they want to pursue in the arts, whether it's puppets or animation, anything like that. And we've gotten a lot of good advice from my previous guests on this subject matter. What's the best advice that you can give to anyone that wants to pursue anything in the arts? And also, if some are just having difficult times, with pursuing what they want to do, what words of wisdom could you provide?
Well, I have a few words of wisdom. I'd say should have fun practicing it for the most part, if not all the time. If you're not having fun while you practice, it's not your passion, and you need to find something that you enjoy, that you will enjoy practicing. So practice is a necessity. I'd say also to be original. Bring what you have, bring yourself and what you have to the table. Because let me tell you, a lot of people want to work with the Muppets. I was in this. This was me too a while back. And they try to act like the Muppets. They try to be the Muppets. They already have a Kermit. They already have Miss Piggy. No one wants to see you do the Muppets, perform the Muppets, or that style of humor. That very similar style of humor. You want to be as original as you possibly can, and originality is what will get you work, at least in my opinion, because that's what helps you stick out, man. You know what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're saying, because there's a lot of groups out there. They're just trying to, and they have their own original stuff, which is good. Right. It's always fun, and it's always good to have original ideas for your group. And of course, we all have taken inspiration from the Muppets, whether it be character designing or doing impressions of them, whether it's good or bad, and we bring that to a new character. Just keep creating new stuff, just because that shows who you are. That's your voice. Yep. With that sense of originality. So you definitely nailed that one on the head with that one. And so you're very welcome, man. And I really enjoyed getting a chance to sit down and talk to you on this new episode. And right before we go, this is one last thing that I always love asking. Now, we've all had our favorite moments with the Muppets, whether it be meeting the actual characters or meeting the performers or builders, writers, whatnot. What is your most favorite Muppet moment?
That would have to be meeting Carol Spinney and Oscar the Grouch at the Museum of the Moving Image right before the I Am Big Bird screening that he was participating in afterwards in an Q&A session. So a little background. I know you were there, but for the audience, for people that weren't there, everyone who attended the museum before the movie got the chance to take photos with Carol and Oscar the Grouch. And I am so grateful, not only that I got to take photos with them, but that I got to speak to Carol, that I got him to sign my book, and he drew like a little picture of Big Bird in it. And he was just so kind, down to earth. Like, you would think, they say don't meet your heroes, and I think that's the case in a lot of scenarios, but this was not one of them. I am so glad I met my hero, Carol Spinney, because wow, he's so talented but so down to earth. I am really grateful. And shout out to my buddy John Papovich, who encouraged me to join him at this special screening. I remember back in the day, Papovich and we took the bus from SUNY New Paltz, all the way to the city, to Port Authority, and then took the subway to Astoria. And while it was a long ride, it was so worth it in the end. And I'm so grateful I was there. That was like easily one of my favorite moments ever.
Absolutely. And yeah, I do remember that day that you, me, and John and Mo Monster, let's not forget.
Yes.
We all went to that event, and we all got to meet Carol, which I got to do a little video for my mom because she wasn't there that day. She still loves it to this day, knowing that she got a video from Oscar and Carol. And yeah, same scenario with that I shared with meeting Carol Spinney. He was such a nice guy, down to earth, and again, like you said, like most people say, don't ever meet your heroes. I mean, that that it does depend on, which hero you're referring to, but in in our case, when it comes to the Muppets or anything with like voice actors and whatnot, they are what you see is what you get. They are seriously the most down to earth, kind hearted people that you will ever meet in a lifetime. And I'm pretty sure you might remember this. When we went to the event and we saw the documentary, John, I was sitting in the middle. John was on my left. You were on my right, and the screen turns to black. And John goes, let's have a moment of silence for Carol's amazing documentary. And I went, you know what? No moment of silence. Carol Spinney, bravo, good sir. And that started an uprising applause. And as Carol was coming down to do his Q&A with his wife Debbie, I looked over and I said to myself, wow, Carol actually got here pretty quick. Not knowing that he was sitting right behind us.
Right, I remember that, yeah.
He was sitting right behind us. And so that means he saw me start the uprising applause. I look over, he looks over to me, he gives me a thumbs up, and he says, thank you.
Okay, that sounds vaguely familiar. I forgot about that. I forgot about that applause and him saying thank you. That sounds vaguely familiar. It's coming back to me.
I remember that to this very day. And just getting that from someone that's portrayed Big Bird and Oscar for 50 years.
Yeah.
That is really something. And I'm glad I was able to share that experience with you and John and Mo Monster at that time. And I really hope we get to do it again.
Yeah, man. Something like that. I mean, unfortunately, Carol is no longer with us.
Well,
but yeah, hopefully we can go to the museum again. I mean, hopefully COVID gets better. Things start to get better soon. I will say before the latest variant, I was at the museum in October and November, so they're still having events. Well, actually, I should say still. They were on pause, the events, but the events are back now. I mean, they're following COVID procedures, so you have to wear a mask and whatnot, and as you should, because it's the right thing to do. So, yep. But yeah, I'm just glad they're back in person. So yeah, long story short, I hope we get to go to one of these events one of these days and just see each other in person. Hopefully soon. Fingers crossed,
Fingers crossed, my friend, as long as we all do everything right within our power. And with that, my friends, we come down to the end of another one. But before we go, I'd like to thank my good friend Spencer Cohen for joining me today on this brand new episode of Muppet Fans Talking. Spencer, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Marcelo. This was so much fun. I'm glad we did this.
Absolutely. And before we go, where can people find you and your amazing cast of characters on social media?
Well, you can go to my website, SpencerCohen.com. You can also find me on Instagram and Twitter at SpencyCohen. And you can follow my buddy, Burger the Monster, on TikTok at Burger the Monster.
There you have it, folks. And so, again, Spencer, thank you so much for joining me today, and we'll see you next time on another episode of Muppet Fans Talking.